So I am going to go on a little bit of a rant here about something because we can't solve problems unless I kind of identify what the problems are. And the reality is that we are living in I think we convinced ourselves the world isn't what it is, and it is what it is. And we are getting these kind of signals that are telling us exactly the world that we're living in right now. Now, let me explain how I got to this point. This is actually this morning. And I've talked about AI. And my wife and I were talking about AI, and we got around to the point of, well, the right now, we were talking about the Joe Biden. Someone used AI in a Joe Biden ad in New Hampshire, and I said, well, right now it seems like most of the AI industry is focused on trying to put the at-home modeling industry out of business. I mean, this is the OnlyFans, the Instagram, the stuff like that, where you have a Patreon page or something like that, where there are a lot of people that are making money and they're empowered and fine. And I have no problem with this. I have no problem with it. My wife has a bit of a problem with it, but I don't have any problem with it because it's kind of one of those things where, you can do this, you can make some money. I remember there was an article I read, I think it was in the Huffington Post a few months back, that the woman was saying, I made $300,000 a year. I make $300,000 every 3 months now doing this. And, it's she's empowered, and, she, own individual. It's an interesting gig, man. It's an interesting gig. I'll say it like that. Now, I do, I'm not exactly a big fan of when the people go on out there and try to cheat other people. It's like, send me $100,000 and I'll be your girlfriend, that sort of thing. No. That's wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. But I don't have any problem with the at-home modeling industry. And I got news for you. The AI industry is coming for you because they see all the money you guys are making. They're saying that money is going to go into our pocket. And I don't know what's going to stop this. I mean, for you guys, I think in 5 years, I think 95% of you are not even going to be in it, doing it anymore. And it's all going to be replaced by AI. I think that's really what it is. Now, once again, my wife is not a big fan of it. And she says it's just vice. And there is what I would like to consider, and if I may propose, an old method of thinking that vice creates problems. And she kind of labeled it in with drugs and gambling, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't consider this like drugs, because people that sell drugs are trying to kill people. Let's just be honest about it. I think that is a bit of a problem. I don't know if I want to necessarily put two and two together there. But stuff like gambling and stuff and video games, we hear that all the time. And, at-home modeling, oh, these are evil things. These are evil and wrong things, and these are the bad things. And look, it's creating sin, and it's creating this thing. And there came a point, and I looked at her and I said, I'm pretty convinced at this point, the country has not been corrupted due to vice. It's the vice that existed. And sure, some of these products are geared towards the vice, but the vice was already there. It just is, we are, I think, as a society, Tipper Gore and heavy metal music and stuff like that, we try to find a villain that this is the reason why it's happening. No. This stuff is there. This is there. My first real glimpse into this. And by the way, I want to say, we all actually started asking a question about this. Is like, what is going on here? Pretty much all the sane people started asking the question in November of 2016. When we asked the question, how in the hell did Donald Trump get elected to be president of the United States? And we are going to go down a rabbit hole here, because I want to, what this conversation opened up was a really larger discussion, which I said to myself, I got to remember all this stuff, because I wrote down notes. I wrote down notes, because the reality is this is everything. You want to know how we're in the world that we are in today. This is it. I'm going to give it to you uncut, unfiltered, best I can. Hopefully it makes some bit of sense. Okay. I didn't realize this broken element of us, the deep, dark underbelly of America, was necessarily connected to the question of how does Trump get elected. But I did start seeing the deep, dark underbelly when the Me Too movement came through. And it blew my mind. I mean, sure, there are jerks. Trust me, I've got a Twitter account. It's not the highlight of my day. How about I say it like that? There are jerks out there, and there are these people who solicit women, send unsolicited, pornography of pictures of their crotches to them, thinking that that's something that anyone wants to see. And, then get angry when the woman basically says, no, I don't want to date you. I don't want to have why would you? No, you're just a blankety, 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 blank. I never knew that existed at the level it did for women. Holy crap. I am sorry. Because no one else is going to say it. I can't comprehend how we have this many broken people. And that was a real big part of it, was this kind of wrapping my head around this idea of how many people are doing that. It's clearly not the same 20 or so. It's clearly a much larger portion of the population than you want to think about. And then I did think about back in my days when I was like in the military and stuff. And there were always these guys that were bragging about, oh, I was out with this girl this weekend, blah, 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 blah. Though you could always tell those guys were making it up. I mean, it was always, it was, you can tell the people that are, the people who don't say anything, that's the trust me, those are the people that, if they're willing to tell the stories, those would be the stories to hear, but they're not willing to because they don't have to. So yeah, I kind of started rolling around. It's like, I guess maybe this number isn't, this reaction to the Me Too thing is actually much larger than I came to realize. But it was a story, and I brought this story back when we were talking about Vice this morning. I was talking about Vice with my wife this morning, and I said, okay, wait a second here. Is the Vice being created, or does the Vice exist? And the story was the one I covered yesterday. 14 states have banned abortion since Roe v. Wade. It's estimated that 64,500 pregnancies have resulted in rape. In those 14 states in 18 months. And the terrifying thing is that the amount of rapes overall, what was the number that they came up here with? Which is just, it's like I said, it's hard to even fathom this. But in 14 states, in 18 months, 519,000 rapes. 520, basically, it's 520,000 rapes in 14 states in 18 months. That's not one or two people. Sure, there are some repeat offenders in there. But this is one of those stories that when I read it, come back and I keep saying to myself, holy God, is it really this bad? Is it really this obnoxious? Is it really this horrible? And yeah, it is. And we have to come to grips with this. Now, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. Like I said, you're more than welcome to come along with me. I appreciate you being here with me. I got a lot more to say about this when I do come on back. 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. So one of the things I think we have to understand is that we're not creating this seedy underbelly. I think the seedy underbelly of America exists, and it's always existed. And we create blame of Vice to basically try to make rational thoughts of it. But the reality is we have to understand at least 25 to 30% of this country is broken. Now, it's various stages of broken, but there's a large amount of disgusting, disturbing people than I think we want to admit. And we need to come to grips with this, because this is why this country is broken right now. What am I talking about? Now, obviously, I'm not all the people on the far right who have been there, and I'll get there in a second. are rapists or bad people like this. But Hillary Clinton was kind of right with this whole description of, basket of deplorables. She was. You've got in this 25 to 30% of just ugliness that exists within our country and has always existed. 20-time losers who just can't get out of their own way. People with full of resentment about choices they have made or feeling like their lives have been thrust upon them, people like that. People who are desperate to make themselves into the hero of their own story so that they can basically vilify others. God, we see that all the time. People who kind of, you can go even to more extremes. People who basically are so angry and upset about their lot in life, they want to kick you out of your house and take over all your stuff and say, you've got to like it. That sort of thing. Basically, the people who viciously attack when, it's basically they go after women who basically they presume, I guess, that every woman wants to sleep with them. And so they go on out there and they mistreat them from the beginning and then get angry. And then some of these people clearly are raping them afterwards. My God. My God. I mean, this is not something we can any longer sit back and ignore because this is getting bad. And I said yesterday on the show when we talked about this story, Texas vowed that they were going to get rid of rape. They're doing a horrible job of it. There was like 20,000 of those pregnancies there. A shocking amount of these rapes are happening in Texas. This is, like I said, it's various different levels. I mean, it's some of it's just personal frustration that's just turned them into bitter, angry people. And some of it are people actually who want to commit crimes. They want to force their way onto others to make themselves seem like a hero. That is about the best way I can describe it. Now, I'm going to say something here which is the truth. And I'm going to say this delicately. Are you prepared? Are you in? The genius of Trump. I know. But hear me out. What Trump figured out before the rest of us wanted to accept it was this existed out there. This 25 to 30% of the country who are just angry, resentful, the ugliness of us all, and people who basically couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag for the most part. He saw them there. And what he ended up doing was something I don't think anyone thought was possible. He molded them into a voting force because he basically said the thing they've been desperately trying to hear their entire life. It's not you, it's them. And that's the truth. He has been able to create a dependable voting bloc, which is a majority of the Republican Party. I'll get back to that here in a second as well. He has been able to mold this pathetic group of losers into a formidable political element. And Stein himself has said this. He's not a Republican, he's a Trumpian. And that's what most of these people are. They don't really care about the Republican Party. They care about Trump because he's their golden, well, kind of brownish. Did you see that one image? Not good. Brownish, roasted like a overdone peanut kind of look to him. Don't leave your circus peanuts out in the sun. That's all. I think that's the lesson we've all learned here today. Ugh. But he molded these people into something no one thought that could ever do, or at least we'd forgotten how to do this. And I'm going to bring this up. And like I say, hey, Trump's the one that's cosplaying Hitler right now. You go back to the beer hall push in the early 30s in Munich and stuff. Hitler kind of did the same thing. He took people who were a bunch of drunks in the bars and basically molded them into his initial, voting force. And granted, it was different there because you had a lot of people who were still frustrated over how World War I ended. But the same pretense, you take a bunch of people who are marginalized and ignored within society, and let's be honest, justifiably. I don't mean that as a Christian. No, I care about people. I don't want you sick. I don't want you dead. I don't want you bankrupt for the rest of your life. I want you to have food. I want you to have shelter. I want you to have these things. but people that I would not follow as far as leadership if my life depended on it, because they're not worth following. They are the people who I've got an idea and everyone goes, okay, what is it, Jim? All right, I want to go over here and grab some mayonnaise. Okay, Jim, good enough. We'll let you get to your mayonnaise idea, but we're going to go and actually solve the problem. That sort of thing. And he went to them and he said, you're not the problem. They're the problem. Your mayonnaise idea was brilliant. Yeah, it was. And that's how you get people wearing Trump hats, Trump gear. Took a group of usually quiet people and told them to yell to be validated. And that's what he did. He went and found the worst of us, and he made a cohesive voting bloc out of them. The resentful, the bigots, the racists, the misogynists, the nihilists, the selfish, the zealots, the alpha males. Hillary was right. It was a basket of deplorables. And you want to know the truth is, I think the politicians already knew that this was out there. I mean, I talked about how, was it Ralph Reed came to George H.W. Bush's White House during his re-election campaign year and said, you know, hey, if you basically bring me on board, I'll bring my whole crew and you'll have a bunch of, you know, the greatest marching, you know, army of political activists you can imagine. And George H.W. Bush said, do not do that, because if you do, we'll never get them out of here. Well, W did. And this is kind of, he was the predicate of this, but Trump saw what the real potential was. He just had to unify them, which is why he constantly, it's us versus them. They want to hurt you. They're trying to hurt me. If they can hurt me, they can hurt you. That's what it is. And I think the politicians knew this, but he was the first crazy freaking loon ball to basically successfully harness the ugliness. These are the people that look at a zombie film and fantasize about the zombie film, because in their world, that's like the ideal outcome. Everybody else is dead, and I'm now the hero. It's the greatest, and I'm going to get the girl. Oh, if you have to get to that point to where that you're the hero of the story, of zombie apocalypse, you're a pathetic loser. But, yeah, there you go. More on this when I do come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evening on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoon on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show, 952-946-6205. So quickly to recap. One, there is not a ugliness that's created by vice. We need to come to grips with, there is a very large portion of the population of this country that is just ugly. This horrible element of our society that, for the most part, is been kind of able to ignore. And I'm not saying that necessarily is the right thing to have done, but at the same time, it's people that basically, for the most part, are the cause of their own pain in their life. And there's varying degrees of it. Some of them are just, 20-time losers. Some of that are people who are like rapists and criminals. I mean, but there is this underbelly of society, which Trump was able to mold into a reliable and dependent voting force, which is how we got him. So when I look at stuff like the Me Too movement and I see how women have actually been treated in this country, I'm like, wow, I shouldn't have been surprised, because the Trump election showed us that. When I had that story yesterday that talked about the amount of rapes that are going on out there, I shouldn't be surprised by that, because the ugliness of America was exposed in 2016 when Donald freaking Trump, a guy who is grossly unqualified and too dumb to be a freaking president, he's too dumb to hold a spoon, for God's sakes, became the president of the United States. And like a lot of people, you're like wondering how this happened. Well, this wasn't about video games or heavy metal music or gambling or, online modeling. No, this was this element out there that existed, that was smart enough to stay quiet until Trump basically enabled them and encouraged them and emboldened them. And here we are. And like I said, it's varying degrees. A lot of these people, like I said, want to be the hero of their own story, even going to that, as I said right before the break, that zombie apocalypse scenario. I wish the zombies would come and eat everybody, because then I'd be the hero. That's the kind of guy that Trump emboldened. That's the kind of person that he appeals to. And that's kind of that group that came together. He told them straightforward to their face, it's not you, it's them. And they were so desperate for that validation. That's why they're so loyal. And like I said, Jeff Stein says it before. These are not Republicans, these are Trumpicans. But I'll get back to that here in a second. These are people who are fantasizing about a civil war. Same thing. Hero worship. Oh, well, I'm going to force my opinions on everyone else. I'm going to finally validate who I am, even though you're a 20-time loser. You're not going to validate that. You're probably going to get killed. But you want to believe these things in your freaking mind. And people, let's be blunt, some of these people just want to be able to shoot people, whether that's a mass shooting or just to walk up and down the street and kill the people they just think deserve it. And that's, and by the way, it does it surprise people when it's, I watched Yellowstone a little bit, and this is an incredibly popular show with this far right menagerie of stupidity that is out there. And it's like, okay, every week it's, let's start shooting at the neighbors, okay, really? Maybe you should make them a pie. Everyone loves pie. You want to get along with your neighbors, pie. You don't get it, Matt. No, I get it. You guys are living in a fantasy world. And granted, that's a TV show, but still, at the same time, there are people out there that just are Kyle Rittenhouse. That whole crew that showed up there, they're desperate here. When Minneapolis imploded after George Floyd was murdered in the street by a cop, there's a ton of these people that showed up all of a sudden, and most of the people that caused all the problems were not from here, were white, from out of state, and Republicans. Boogaloo boy guys. And there you can check out the arrest records. No, there is this ugliness that has been fused into a cohesive voting bloc by Trump. And it's larger than people want to think. I mean, I think that what that was the thing that wasn't making any sense for a lot of people. It's like, okay, how does Donald Trump win? Sure, I get it, 5-10% of the population, but how does he get here? He got here because he activated that voting bloc. The Republicans went along with him, and they convinced enough people to stay at home. And that's how he wins. And this is what we have to deal with. And by the way, this is the majority of the Republican Party. Just look at the last two, the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary. Take a look at those. Take a look at Trump's numbers. 52, 55%. It's barely over the midpoint, but it is an undeniable majority of the Republican voter. And that's why these Republicans have to cater to the dark underbelly, the ugliness that is America. They have to, because it's actually become the majority of their party. Barely a majority, but it's there. You want an example of how far the Republican Party has fallen? This is amazing. This is amazing. Think about how politics used to be in this country. And then listen to this delightful nugget. Now, this is apparently in the 4th Congressional District in Colorado. This is a district that Lauren Boebert jumped into to try to win because she couldn't win the district she was in, which I think was like a +4 Republican. She still couldn't win that one. In a debate they had last night, State Representative Mike Lynch, who this week stepped down as the GOP minority leader in the State House, fired back at her after she brought up his DUI arrest by asking her, can you give me the definition of carpetbagger to me? With Boebert saying she moved to give her kids a fresh start, and then added, and this move is the right move for me and them, especially since it might give you a chance to be back in the House. According to the Times report, at one point, candidates were asked to raise their hands if they'd ever been arrested. 6 of the 9 candidates on stage raised their hands to cheers and applause from the audience. Ta-da! Exhibit Z. Think about this for a second. To applause, to cheering, 2/3 of the candidates on the stage have been arrested. And that is not necessarily a down. It's a plus. They are looked at as heroes because the 20-time losers in the crowd were like, I've been arrested 4 times. I wish I could be a House member. Maybe I'll get up there on stage. That's what we've, I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that the numbers in the caucuses don't, the caucus in Iowa and the primary in New Hampshire don't match that exact sentiment. And in some districts, the most Republican districts, it's how bad could you possibly be? That's the key. That's the element. How bad can you possibly be? Because you got to keep this delusional base happy, which brings up a deeper rabbit hole, if I may. Because not only do we have to deal with the rabbit hole that is the fact that there is this ugliness in America that does exist. Not only do we have to understand that this rabbit hole, that the fact that Trump was able to mold this ugliness into something of an effective voting bloc, but we have to understand what the game plan is from Republicans, who once again are dependent on the majority of these voters showing up for them. So they have to basically pander to the ugliest elements of our country. And not just the people who are 20-time losers or people that desperately want to turn themselves into the hero of their own story, but we're talking about the bigots and the racists and the misogynists and the rapists and the people that want to start a civil war. They have to appeal to them, or they have no chance. It should be no surprise when you think about this, that this is why the GOP has focused as much of their attention on rural America as possible. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they can control a lot of rural America. It's a lot easier to control that than in the metro areas and the suburbs. And they are now dependent. The GOP is dependent on bitter, angry people. That's what they are. They're dependent on them. They have no intent on making their lives better. Republicans have been in charge for years in rural America, and they have not made your life better. Your housing is worse. Your pay is worse. The health care is worse. Your schools are worse, thanks to the Republicans. They are forcing themselves onto rural America and making sure that they basically make things as bad as possible for them. They basically have convinced their voters of a lie, that no matter how bad things are with them in charge, that somehow it'd be worse if the Democrats were here. That's their entire, if you go into rural America, it's like, sure, you don't have any jobs and the water supply is poison and you have to drive an hour and a half to go to a maternity ward and all these things. But thank God the Democrats aren't in charge, right? They create scare tactics about, they're coming for your guns. They're coming for your Jesus. Jesus wants you to have your guns. What? They create all this stuff. And they are able to control this voting bloc by being the craziest they can be, to pandering to the worst elements of our society. And once again, these people love it. Because for the most part, these are not the people that should be guiding us as a society. These are not the people who should be leading us. These are not the people that should be representing us. But now, because the Republican Party's opened the welcome mat and put the welcome mat down, open the door, highly inferior people who should have never been allowed to run for office are now controlling the U.S. House. They're by the way, is it one of the things I want to quick mention here, just crossed my mind. Isn't it funny, though, when you look at rural America and you look how the Republicans have controlled it, and when there's actually the real thing going on right now, when that's going on, that there's like the water supply gets poisoned, they have no interest in trying to help them. It's all, we need the Democrats to come on out here and help us. We need the Democrats to come on out here and give us money for the water supply or open a new hospital or give us funding for schools. And resentfully, belligerently, angrily saying, you need to help us. And the reality is that they know the Democrats will help them because the Democrats actually care, while the Republicans could care less. But then they'll take credit. Pete Stauber up in the Minnesota 8th, taking credit for the Blatnick Bridge between Superior, Wisconsin and Duluth, Minnesota, taking credit for it because basically there's no accountability. 952-946-6205. Patrick, we do have breaking news, according to you, a verdict in the Carroll trial, the Eugene Carroll trial, right?
Yes, Donald Trump has been found liable to pay Eugene Carroll $83.3 million. Again, that number, that is not a misprint. That number, $83.3 million.
Oh, man. Oh, God. He's your king, losers. He's your king. $83.3 million. And that's the beginning of his legal troubles. Oh, he looks so angry. There isn't a safe bottle of ketchup anywhere in the New York metro area now. 83. Oh, I think Haba did such a fantastic job. I'm sure she's getting paid. Oh, I'm sure that Donnie is, let me just scribble out that check for you. $83.3 million. Hey, by all the means, all you Republicans out there who are hate listening to me right now, I want to make sure you understand something. He was found guilty of raping her, and you still love him. You didn't demand he get out of the way. He raped somebody, and he is liable for it for 83.3 for actually defamation was what he's liable there. It's just amazing what you guys have fallen into. And you got to look at what the Republicans have done as a whole, because they've got to keep this. This is their base now. So I tell you what, when I come back, I'm going to stop laughing here in a second. When I come back, let me break down a little bit about what we can do to fight this, okay? It's the Matt McNeil Show. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Once again, the verdict on the amount that Trump has to pay Eugene Carroll, $83.3 million. $83.3 million. Hilarious. All right. Recapping the rabbit holes I've been going down this show. Let's do this really quick. One, that there is a much larger, ugly underbelly to America than we want to realize. It is a truly disturbing element of our society. 20-time losers, people that wish they were the hero of their own story, going all the way down to bigots, racists, rapists, and murderers. And that is these groups of people that are out there who are just angry about society. And Donald Trump was able to mold them into a viable voting force. And that is how he wins in 2016. The Republicans now are stuck with this group of people, as it is now the majority of the voter base. Take a look at the Iowa caucus, 50-some%. Take a look at New Hampshire, 50-some%. Those are the loyal Trump supporters. And the rest of the party is desperately trying to find someone else. And so they're stuck there, and they have to get into bed with this, and they have no intent on trying to make anyone's life better because they can't do that. First of all, the Democrats are trying to make people's lives better at a much better rate than they are. So they'll look bad. But the reality is the best chance they've got is to keep everyone miserable and poor and broken. As long as basically they feel as you can blame the Democrats for it, they're there. But the Republicans have been the ones that have been in charge of all these areas where there's all this Republican hate. And they haven't fixed a damn thing. And they have no intention of doing it. And like I said, if you're at the point now, you want to see how far the Republican Party has had, let alone the fact that they are basically, going to elect a guy who's been convicted of raping a woman who now has to pay her $83.3 million because he can't shut up because he's a petulant man-child with bronzer. What you got instead is this Republican Party that is basically betrothed to him. So how do we fix it? How do we fix this problem? Here is the ugly truth. That voting bloc is so damn loyal to Trump, you can't fix them. You can't convince them. That 25 to 30% of the Republican Party that would march through fire for Trump won't go there, because once again, these are people who are losers who Trump validated. And by doing that, he became a god to them. And it's all them versus us for them. They don't see it. They could fix their own lives. They'd rather not. They'd rather just blame everyone else. That is who they are. They will go to the ends of the earth to keep their fantasy alive, that they are somehow the hero of their story. So it requires the rest of us, the 75 to 70% who are not pathetic 20-time losers, who are not people so desperate to be a hero of their own story that they basically want to force their ways on everyone else. The people that are misogynist and racist and bigoted. We, the rest of us, have to put this group of people back onto the barbed wire compound in frickin' Montana where these people used to roam. Terrified of coming on out because they knew they were losers. And that's what we have to do, which means everybody has to show up. Now, I think we clearly can make an argument here, especially with this rape story, that we need to make much harsher penalties, not only clearly for rape, and try to give women the right to where they're not re-victimized by a bunch of, jackassian white Republican men who are trying to force their agenda on them. But I think it may be time for us to actually address the fact that, do people have a right to anonymity? Now, the town square is open, and when you were in the town square, I went down there as Matt McNeil, and I spoke in the town square. And people knew who I was, and I was able to say my peace of mind. And that is what used to be freedom of speech. Now, you can basically create 20 freaking burner accounts on Twitter and randomly send crotch pictures to anyone else. And should that person have anonymity? I don't think they should. And there's nothing in the Constitution on freedom of speech that says that someone has the right to be anonymous with their freedom of speech. Make them go into the public square. That will shame these jackasses back into their mom's basements. You got to beat Trump. You got to vote all these people out. You have to. We have to do this. We have to convey the truth. And that is not only that the Democrats can no longer sit out elections, that you can't be fooled by Republican talking points about, I'm going to stay home and not vote and protest. That's them. They cannot win if we show up. They cannot win if we show up. We have to show up in force. We have to show up with force like we did in 2020 and again every single election. We have to. We have to remind them that Republicans, in many cases, have been in charge of your life for decades, for generations, and have not made your life better. And sure, you're not going to get the Trump deplorables to wake up from their stupor of grandeur, but you might get the rest of the Republican Party to start shaking off and realize, yeah, these guys haven't been helping me. I lost, 3 family members to nitrate poisoning in the water supply that Republicans told me it's too much of a problem to deal with. I lost my family member because we couldn't get to the nearest hospital because it was an hour away because all the hospitals closed, and Republicans said, what are we supposed to do? The Republicans have not delivered for you. But you know where they deliver? They deliver for the Democrats. They deliver for the rest of us. And the reality is, as I pointed out, when Republicans are really in need, they deliver for you too. But they just take credit for it because they're a bunch of lying jackasses. They need help. We can't do that. But what we can do is tell them your days of controlling the talking points and the narrative of this country are over. It's time for you to go back to your compounds, go back to your mom's basement, go back to your quiet life, and leave us the hell alone. Because the reality is we need to beat this back if we are going to survive as a country. And I do love this country. God bless the United States. We got work to do this year, people. We have a lot of work to do.